In this episode, I dive deep into the experience of anxiety, not just as a mental health challenge, but as a message from the body that something is out of alignment. We trace the roots of anxious energy, how it affects our breath, digestion, and sleep, and explore simple yet powerful ways to ground ourselves through daily rituals and Ayurvedic wisdom. This conversation is a gentle reminder that healing anxiety isn't about control. It's about connection to your body, your rhythm, and your inner calm. Hope you enjoy this episode. A very warm welcome to all of you to Ayurvedic Healing and Beyond podcast, and this is your host, Dr. Vignesh Devraj. In today's episode, we will discuss about dealing with anxiety. Now, let us understand what is anxiety. Anxiety is a body's response to a pseudo-threat. So, somewhere the body is feeling not aligned with some threat, but the difference is your brain cannot differentiate the reality and your vivid imagination. If it's a reality or a vivid even if you imagine something to be really true, the brain perceives it as the reality. The same aspect when it comes to anxiety, there could be a real threat or a pseudo threat. But if your mind perceives it, okay, that is a threat, even though the perceived threat is a pseudo threat. As long as you perceive it as a threat, your body will have a misalignment and it goes on a fight or flight mode. This is what is anxiety. So there are various ways to look at anxiety. Now, I always say, if you look at it from an Ayurvedic concept, we have this concept of Vata. Vata is your energy that deals with all the movement, the nervous system. And the creative element in the body is also Vata. That is what we call as Prana. So, creativity used in the wrong direction or a self-destructive mode is what is anxiety. And if you actually look at anxiety, you are being very creative in thinking what all worst case scenarios can happen. You're being very creative in how things can go wrong. But that creativity is not happening in the area where you can grow or improve or have more stability, but it's actually going in a wrong direction where it is actually destroying you or debilitating or draining your energy. So anxious people have a high creative energy, but just that they missed that ability to use it in the right direction. And that ability to use it in the right direction is the way to balance it. And that's where the concept of balancing the Vata comes. Now, let's understand why people get anxious. By genetics, our brain actually is not designed to keep us happy. Our brain is always looking for threats. Because, like recently I went for a safari in a wildlife place. And when we were on the jeep looking for animals, you have a prey and a predator. You have a wild animal that is looking for its food. And the wild animal that is looking for its food always hides in high bushes. So what happens? Whenever there is a strong movement in the leaves or the grass, the prey will panic and run. And we were actually like our forefathers not so long ago. When you look at the history of evolution of time, it's not that long where our great ancestors were actually hunter-gatherers. And any movement that we see that is moving, that is not healthy for us, we could perceive it as we could be food to somebody. So that is why we are designed to look for threats, because survival is very important. So if you look at what are the two main functions of our brain, it is survival and reproduction. And in order to survive, you need to stay alive, look for threats. That is the first main thing. And that is why the nervous system, it's called nervous system. It always tends to get nervous. It is prone to get nervous. So we are biologically wired to look for threats. But what used to be a threat in the forest, today it comes out as deadlines, traffic jams. Will I be able to make it with my financial obligations? Will I be able to get the job that I wanted? Will I be able to fulfill the position that I am in right now? So all these things, it could come as real threat or a perceived threat. So by nature, our brain is not designed to keep us happy. It is highly prone to get into an anxious thought loop. So that is one reason why we all at some point get into a mode of anxiety. Now, let us also understand what are the ways to come out of those. Now, on one hand, we have this genetic mode that is happening. On the other hand, we need to train ourselves how not to fall into that trap. If you look at anxiety, it is a pseudo threat. Now, the difference between fear and anxiety: fear is a response to a real threat, something that is really going to come and impact you. And if you don't take an action, if you don't prepare yourself, it will create an issue. And if you look at anxiety, anxiety is a pseudo fear or a pseudo threat. But your body is behaving like it's a real threat. It's like, imagine you have a fire alarm. The fire alarm is supposed to go and wake up people when there is a real fire. But if that fire alarm goes when there is no real threat, no real fire, and then you learn to just deal with that fire alarm without correcting that intelligence behind when the alarm should go, when the alarm should not go. So that is what this concept of sattva, rajas, tamas. The idea of sattva is to know when the alarm should go and not the alarm to go whenever due to some mistake. And that is why inculcating the concept of sattva is very important as an antidote for anxiety. Otherwise, what happens? There could be a pseudo alarm, like the story about the shepherd who is taking care of the sheep, and the group of villagers told, there is a fox, and if the fox comes to hunt the sheep, just call us, we will come and protect you. 2-3 times the shepherd got bored and he just calls that the fox is coming, and the people came to protect the sheep. But then the 3rd or 4th time, when the real fox came, the villagers stopped trusting him. So it's a pseudo alarm that our mind does. Sometimes the pseudo alarm can also happen because somewhere deep inside, whenever a person goes through these kind of alarm, it could come as anxiety. They see there is a lot of attention that is coming to them, or they see that it is also helping them to cope with maybe in an unhealthy way. So dealing with anxiety is getting clarity. First is asking the question, is this a real threat or am I just imagining it to be? Even if there is a mild sense of pressure that I need to deal with. Okay, let's say I have a presentation to finish by the next 3 days. And if I don't work on that presentation, and if I keep worrying about that presentation, that anxiety is just going to build up and more pressure will come. And then somewhere anxiety will put you in such a position where you will start saying, maybe I should postpone this, or I should not go, or why am I doing this? And we will come up with all the reasons why this is not good. And we will reach a stage of unwanted panic. Some people, the physiological response can be sweaty palms, they have high heart rates or panic attacks, or they get migraine or pain in different parts of the body. And actually, it's quite interesting how this low-grade anxiety, when it is not treated and dealt with properly with the right therapies or the right systems, in the long term, it leads to many of the idiopathic conditions that we call. So, low-grade anxiety is a big problem that is it influences our emotion, it influences our hormones, thereby it influences our overall energy levels, immunity, and our overall sense of well-being. So that's why this is very important to be treated at its root cause. So in its root cause, if you look at it, it's like, why am I considering this to be a threat? Is it a real threat? And what steps should I do so that it will help me to do that? So one thing you can deal with, let's say your partner or a friend is going through some anxiety. The worst thing you can tell a person going through anxiety is, you should think positive. Why are you so negative? That will make the anxiety even worse, and maybe that person wants to run away or wants to just hit you badly. So the best thing to tell a person who is going through an anxious loop is, what is bothering you right now? Can I help you? Just tell me what exactly is bothering you right now. And then when that person says something is bothering, don't judge, oh my God, how can you bother about such a silly thing? Instead of saying, okay, can you also tell me why is that really bothering you? Maybe you'll go a little more deep and that person will also open up. And then the next question you can ask is, okay, what steps can we do right now? Don't say, can you take? Maybe sometimes you can also be part of it. Can I help you to take so that you will be able to, be prepared for it? Always, whenever there is a threat, our body feels in a fight or flight mode because we don't have the ability to face it. That ability to face it, it could be resources, it could be some preparations, it could be some activity that we need to have, or something that we have, so that when that threat happens, we are prepared for it. So one of my concerns that I used to face when I travel long distance to another country, and especially if I have a transit flight, in that transit, what if my luggage doesn't come to the destination that I'm landing? And it has happened 2-3 times. And ever since that happened, I used to get worried. What if my luggage doesn't come? But the good thing is the flight that is supposed to deliver the luggage, within 1 or 2 days, they will deliver it to the location that you tell them. So what I do is I think about what is the worst case scenario. Okay, maybe 1 or 2 days you don't have the luggage. So in my cabin luggage, I prepare it in a very minimalistic way that I can survive those 2 days without the checked in luggage comes. So at least that gives me a peace of mind. So same way, always have a plan B. If things, first is question, what is really the threat? Is it a real threat or a pseudo threat? And if there is some truth to that threat, maybe it's a borderline threat or you need to be prepared. Do everything in your capacity. Focus your mind on what must I do so that I don't get it. I don't get into that problem. And you'll always see anxiety can be a result of inaction in the right areas. And that is where tamas comes in. You are being very tamasic in not taking the right action in the right areas. And you're being rajasic in doing the wrong actions in the wrong areas. And this is where the lack of Sattva Gunna is. You're not realizing. And sometimes people overdo things on the wrong areas and not do things where it is supposed to be done. And that also leads to anxiety. And on another way, we can also discuss about depression, which I'll do on another episode. And if you look at concept of Vata, what actually balances Vata is your breath, because Vata is oxygen, your air, your respiratory rate, and then your touch. That is why when people go for certain therapeutic massage, they feel very relaxed and calm after that. And the sound, the way you talk, and also what you listen to. And sometimes when you talk to certain people, they might have some tendency to trigger your anxiety loop. Sometimes when you speak to certain people, you will see that they have the ability to calm you down. Why are you worrying so much? So sometimes I've seen patients, when they go to certain astrologers or some doctors, after that, they get into a terrible anxiety because the way they explain things can actually make them even more anxious, because they put them to these things can happen, that things can happen, so you should be concerned, but they are not giving them what are the right steps to be done. And in these conditions, the best example, the best inspiration that we can learn from is, once I was just reflecting on one of my flight. I was put on a sit on the emergency exit of the flight. And I'm sitting in the emergency exit of the flight, and one flight steward comes and tells me, "Sir, do you speak English or Hindi or what is the language?" And I say, I'm very comfortable with English. And then she starts saying, "In the case of emergency landing, and if there is a water landing that is going to happen, please take your life jacket, and you should be opening that emergency exit so the whole entire flight can exit." And this, she was explaining it in a very calm, as if we're going to have a walk in the park kind of a way. And then I was just thinking, imagine if people did this with a lot of drama, like with the music and all of this. I think nobody will enter the flight anymore. And all the flight announcements that I hear from the pilot or the air hostess, they always say, "Stay calm. There is a turbulence. Please put on your seatbelt. Avoid using the washroom, and please put on your seatbelt and stay safe." I mean, they don't make you panic. They give you what are the next steps to be done. So anxiety is just thinking about the threat without realizing what are the next steps to be done. So that's one thing I love to, understand how the flight attendants carry so much of calmness in that situation. And once I was in the flight, and one person was getting worried about the turbulence that was going. So immediately there was a flight attendant. He comes and tells, "Sir, you don't actually have to worry about the turbulence. It's just imagine your roads have some potholes and the cars are going through that. And there will be some bumpiness happening, and your shock absorbers, depending on the shock absorbers, it goes. And the same is happening with the turbulence. You really don't have to worry about it." And then after that, suddenly he is very relaxed and calm. So it's all about how you talk to the person who's anxious and how you talk to yourself when you're going through that anxiety. One of the most powerful methods, chanting mantras or listening to certain guided meditations. Recently, I just released an episode on guided meditation for anxiety. And it's about certain words that, it's okay if things are uncertain, and how can you deal with it? Because if you see some of the people who have good emotional stability, they are the ones who have a great adaptability to uncertainty. When anxiety can come across as control freakness or perfectionism, and if things don't go the way I want it, I cannot feel safe or calm. So this guided meditation is a way to you script. It's used, a certain script is used in a way that so you really calm yourself down so that you can actually, okay, if things don't are not happening the way I want, maybe there is an opportunity for something new to happen. You use your curiosity to find out maybe there is something new that can come out of it. And you see all the great innovations and inventions that have happened. It's because somewhere somebody was very curious about the uncertain things that happened. And that is where all the big things happen. So that curiosity has to happen. And somewhere you also have to make peace with making mistakes. Like today we talk about the United States of America was discovered by Christopher Columbus. Actually, that was a mistake. He was going in search of India and he found some other land, and now we call it America. But it's because he used the word explore. So when you are in a mind of exploration, you put a lot of curiosity. So that kind of attitude and methods has to be trained in the mind in order to getting into that anxious loop. And that is what we call as the Sattva Gunna. To identify where to use the action in the right areas and where to be passive or inactive where it doesn't matter. And that is when Sattva Gunna is inculcated. And Sattva Gunnas are inculcated when you practice guided meditation, breath work, meditation, chanting of mantras, and spending time in nature, or when you take a short walk. It will really calm you down, and movement of the body in the right area will also help. So all of this put together, this is how we try to come out of anxiety. And I have to tell you, please also look at some of the blood works. In some of the previous episodes, I spoke about what are the biomarkers of Vata. Like let's say your vitamin B12 is low or vitamin D3 is low. There could be tendencies of anxiety. Or if your sleep is deprived, if you're not sleeping properly, if your routine is not proper with your sleep and food, this can also lead to anxiety in many people. Because when your body is tired, you are much more prone to have perceived pseudo threats. But when your body is resilient, see, when you're happy, a big problem, you can take it very light. But when you're very tired, even a small problem can trigger you like, oh, there's a big problem that is happening and how will I deal with it? So that's why it's very important. Keep your body in a very good, resilient, healthy manner so that these threats are not perceived as, these pseudo threats are not perceived as pseudo threats. Understanding anxiety it's a mental game. And you need to inculcate your Sattva Gunna, that is clarity, and identify, is it a real threat or a pseudo threat? And that comes with being more curious about your thought patterns. And when you follow this, in the long term, maybe you will not be able to change it overnight within 1 or 2 weeks. Maybe when you practice these methods over 6 months, and suddenly you will realize, oh my God, those were the incidents that I used to really panic in the past. Now that doesn't panic me anymore. I deal with it with much more confidence and resilience. And that's the stage we want to be. I'll be doing a online course on how to deal with anxiety in a detailed way so that I'll be talking about the biomarkers that you need to check, what are the tools that you need to do in your daily life, and also giving you a lot of guidance. Even if you have a long-term tendencies with anxiety, what steps must I do so that I come out of it and to have a calm, peaceful mind? These are techniques that I'll be discussing that I have practiced to myself and dealt it with and also prescribed it to my patients. And please do sign up. You can find the details about this course in the show notes of this podcast. And please do sign up if it's something that is going to help you.